Do you like conversation on a variety of topics? Feel like no one wants to talk about the things that interest you? Tired of only hearing the same political, sports, or catastrophe talk? Yeah, we feel that way too. Join two high-functioning geeks as they discuss just about anything under the sun. We can't tell you what we'll be talking about each week because we don't know where our brains will take us. It will be an interesting conversation though, so hang on and join us. Here comes the Relentless Geekery.
Brought to you by Mind Architecture. Building worlds for your mind.
Nice choice of background.
Absolutely. Great minds think alike. It's really just to totally derail the list of what I had just said we should talk about. I just wrote a post on Facebook that was about whatever the secret weather scientists that are controlling the whole shooting match. They must live here in Cleveland area, Northeast Ohio, because while all the rest of the North American continent and maybe the world is having, name it, droughts and floods and typhoons and hurricanes and tornado alley and whatever else, we've had amazingly beautiful weather for most of the summer.
Yeah.
I remember times when we sealed the house up for a month at a time with the AC, and instead we've had the AC on to sleep in our bedroom, maybe, I don't know, half a dozen, 10 times in the course of the summer. We've been out walking in the metro parks. And in the winter, it just wasn't that severe. I've had years where I piled so much snow up against our fence that I was worried that I'm going to be able to get my car between the fence and the house. And instead, for whatever reason, we've just got this eye of the hurricane, beautiful, temperate, but just enough rain to keep things growing. And I don't know, we're really doing well compared to how Canada's burning, and wow.
You say that now. And today is beautiful. I've walked out several times, walked the dog, and I'm just like, man, this is like my perfect day. It's just on the edge of getting to be autumn. I can tell it's darker in the morning. It gets darker quicker at night. But they're saying it's going to hit 90s over the weekend. So
we're going to get Indian summer or whatever early. Usually that's October where you get that last burst of warmth before you really winter clamps down and stuff. I'm okay with having fall be like, how about a couple months instead of just 1 week where you go from shorts to jacket weather? How about just
this is Ohio, so very often you could wake up with snow in the morning and then you got to time it to get that 23 minutes of fall, and then it's a spring or something, and then boom, it's 90 and it's summer. I mean,
exactly. I'll tell you again, always looking for the geek aspect. One of the wonderful things about, and we've talked about this a little bit before, weather forecasting is amazing nowadays. You really can watch in real time radar things about what's coming in. You can judge if the route you're going to take is going to be covered by the rain cloud or can you skirt it. And especially what I've loved is I'm becoming like the world champion with getting my lawn mowed just before the rain hits. I see that rain is supposed to hit at 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and I don't plan it this way. I'm not like the king of procrastinators, but it's nice to know that I can start and I'm not going to get caught and just curse the sky and stuff like that. Any number of times I've got the thing done, and then like immediately after the rain, it washes away some of the grass clippings. It revives the lawn. If there's a thing about just-in-time inventory for how one does lawn maintenance, I've really half a dozen times this summer done it just in time, or got out there and trimmed bushes or whatever else it might be. So I don't need to be perfectly predictable. It just has been really handy to be able to get like down to the couple hour range instead of day by day what it's going.
My mower spent the first part of the summer down. Two different causes. I got it back, and literally before I made one pass, I got it caught and it ripped part of the wires out, and it was a mess, and it was down for a while again. But I have talked about this before. I grew up with a Cub Cadet little riding mower, you know.
Okay. Because you had property, you had acres, and I only have a postage stamp. You know what I mean?
It would take hours, like all Saturday, because we got so many trees and bushes and rocks and hills, and it's go around, and those things aren't the tightest turns. You got to go and back up and move and all sorts of stuff. Man, I'll say again, I love my zero turn. It cuts so much down in time and extra mowing, and
good for you. That's, honestly, for a big property, we went to a funeral service this morning, as I mentioned. That's why we had to delay a little bit, and their grounds are immaculate. But you can see that part of the reason they are is because they've got the new mowers that really do the zero turn thing, and they just seem to be precise in their handling. And I don't know, however they are doing applying the right stuff to their lawn and the herbicide, and so that it's just almost like putting green, perfect stuff. And I know that when Nick and Kelly talk about what they do for their farm, they send in soil samples to the American Farm Bureau or whoever does that kind of analysis, and they are not super computerized, but I know that a lot of the big farms really, they have it that it goes along and it's got like a monitor that's checking the ground, and it spritz and it gets exactly the weed that it wants to kill. It's not wholesale tear it all up. It's cool how they've made it so that you can really maximize the yield and manage all of every process, the seeding, the weeding, the reaping, all that kind of stuff really seems to be another cool thing that they've been able to computerize, or at least so much assist human beings. They do a whole bunch of cool stuff with they're a big enough place, but individual, so that the developers of like new hybrids for corn, for all the different kinds of vegetables, they get seeded with those prototypes.
That's
and
cool.
and it's cool to be like, there's real practical work in genetics that's being done to say this corn is sweeter than ever, hardier than ever. It grows in nice straight rows. It's not snaggletooth Indian corn. And every year, I just love the fact, not to be weird, hey, for all those who really don't believe, in the whole thing of evolution, every day, in every way, genetics and our understanding of how that stuff works makes it that we increase our crop yields. We make it so that we can include iodine in golden rice and save 1 billion people doing it. We put iodine in the salt. We put fluoride in the water. I'm going all over, but just that fact that they really have the science of hybridization. And I know that there was, let's say 20, 25 years ago, they started talking about, oh no, Frankenfood, and how they were doing genetic manipulation to get this stuff. And in some cases, there were 1 or 2 really highly publicized things where we really don't know what we're doing, and we don't always know the laws of unintended consequences. So we had the neonicotinoids that were like an insecticide that was being used, but it was also, oh no, killing all the monarch butterflies or killing valuable species as
Or
well.
even DT clear back in the 70s.
Oh, exactly. Go back to Rachel Carson. Her Silent Spring is an incredibly important book because it showed how this is really good. DT is helping us in this way, but all the eagle eggshells are too fragile and we're killing the eagles. You go back to Agent Orange, which they use as the big defoliant in the Vietnam War, where you find out that people get permanent effects from having breathed that in, that it didn't just clear a path for the war to continue, it damaged people permanently. So there's science that has to be done about not only developing it, but making sure that you test it in every environment and stuff like that. But having said that, you don't have one bad case and then say, no, we're abandoning it entirely. Science is about continual research and experimentation and refinement.
Getting back on path and readjusting.
Yeah, get back on the path.
And people that say, you said that your theory was this and it's not, so science must be wrong. No, that's how theories work. That's what they're for. We think it's going to do this. It didn't. It did this instead. Here's our new data. Here's our new theory. That's how it works. And yes. Along with that, what makes me want to hit people with baseball bats is when they say stuff like, yeah, well, science or this technology is just ruining our country and it's ruining this and I hate this and blah, 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 and blah, blah. It's okay, we'll get rid of it. And then, man, prices are too high in the supermarket. That's because we got rid of all the tech and science that took care of the low prices. So folks, you can't have both. You can't have this abundant food supply with minimal people farming it and low prices all at the same time without something.
There's way back, like maybe at the start of social media.
Social media didn't used to exist.
No, there was a time when we actually went out and meet friends.
It was called a campfire.
Someone put out a book called Free, Perfect, and Now. And it was pretty much, you can have 2 or 3. You know what I mean? That all the ways in which we refine and that you can't, it is especially irritating to me when people are like, you give them a miracle, but they didn't like that miracle. They didn't like exactly that miracle. So they're willing to say, abandon it instead of, can we tweak the miracle? Can we first acknowledge that we just cured a disease that was incurable before, that we increased the crop yield not by 1%, but like by 50%, that the Malthusian nightmare of us having a bigger population than the carrying capacity of the planet, we'll never have enough food, that's been put off again and again by the fact that we've done such wonderful science with that they yield more, or they resist the drought or other conditions more, they resist bugs and stuff like that. So things that have built-in herbicide, And indeed, we keep finding out that there might be some downsides to that. Roundup isn't miracle stuff. It really does have some effects. But the whole point is you don't abandon. You learn more and then you better. And over the course of time, so the fact, like you said, if science has been wrong once, you know what? It's probably going to be wrong 1,000 more times, but it's going to be right 10,000 more times. And our life nowadays would not exist without all that we learn and continue to improve upon.
Science it's not mistakes, it's not things, it's because we're still learning and things change, and it's a very vibrant world out there. You want a mistake? Sticky notes are a mistake. They're the exact opposite of what the guy wanted.
Yeah, I would say fortuitous accident or whatever.
Yes, there you go. That sounds like a bad band.
Exactly.
That sounds like a band I've been in. You mentioned the farming and we talked the mowing. So it makes me laugh. We're talking tech, farming, mowing, because there are some really great video game simulators of both farming and mowing that you can play. I've played both. And they're really good simulators to try and get you into it. It's interesting.
I've done city building. I played SimCity and the various different variations, but I've never done managing a farm or managing an amusement park. Somehow, I don't know, those simulations don't appeal to me as much as the full fantasy thing of going underground to kill creatures and collect treasure. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So
there's different farming ones. So just racing games, which is interesting because I want to talk about the Gran Turismo movie, but like racing games, you've got your kart racers, which are just loads of fun, simple, easy for anyone to play. Then you have the arcade racers, which have more physics in them, but they're really about, let's see how fast and crazy we can go. Then you got like the sim racers, which are down to the detail physics extreme.
This is the real dashboard. This is
exactly. Exactly. And that's what you get with some of these sims also. You've got these farming sims, which are cute little people, and you plant something and boom, it grows. And you got these other ones that you have to get the right tractor with the right size spreader to put down the seeds, and you got to get the right seeds with the right, like you said, soil moisture. You got to send the soil get analyzed. They have that in some of these games, that type of thing. So you have the wide range for everybody.
Yeah. You know what? We haven't, I don't think, talked about this before. When you look at the progress in PCs, so much of it has not been based on, I need a faster spreadsheet so that I can do my investments better. It's been based on, I want my games to be more realistic. I want my videos to be better. Like from what I think, I don't think I read this in the book, maybe it was an article in Wired magazine or something like that, that 5 years worth of betterment on the IBM PC and clones was based on making Microsoft Flight Simulator work better. That it wasn't about Lotus 1, 2, 3 and then Excel. It wasn't databases and the big real world important things. It was people that really were like, wow, we're so close. If we can just get the physics engine to do this more correctly, if we decrease the lag time, if we can make, like we said, that dashboard really look just perfect and respond in real time like we want it to, and that kind of thing. I think that and I should say this, it's not only games. From what I understand, porn had a lot to do with how we got better and better compressor decompressors, all the codecs that we make use of. It was so that you could deliver good looking content no matter what connection you had, whether it was dial up and then the old days of cable, early Wi-Fi, all that kind of stuff. It was so you'd get away from pixelated stuff to, wow, that really looks good. That looks intoxicatingly good.
The title of this episode is going to be about new porn. But that's funny that you say that, because people, they ask all the time. And I've tried to explain this to people in today's world. I'm like, there is not a computer out on the shelf that can't do what you want to do. It's that simple. They are so powerful. And when people say, I want the most powerful, I'm like, I can appreciate that. You buy good power now, you don't have to replace it in 2 years. I'm like, then go to the store and tell them you want a gaming rig. I don't want to play games. I don't care if you don't want to play games. Those are the most powerful computers.
They've optimized all of that you care about in terms of video quality and stuff like that. That's right. I know. Funny, we get once in a while kind of, oh, back in my day. But one of the joys of being alive in the course of these last, let's say 30 years, has been when I got out of school in 83, so it's 40 years ago, I missed Plato terribly because it could do so many things before the rest of the world could. But to be alive during those 40 years and to find out how Apple and IBM and Microsoft and Oracle and all different kinds of companies and technologies have just continually made the world a better place. That it was, you had big iron for the mainframes to be able to run big insurance companies and banks and things that needed it, but you started to have, wow, this athletic shoe store can have a PC running its system. It's no longer just a till, just a cash register and stuff like that. And all the ways in which, once you had those individual things, then you started to do networking, and you found out that you really could have, let's see, what is it, Mrs. Fields cookies. One of the secrets to its success was that it had good communications between the stores, and they could manage, like in near real time, what they were going to do to order for the next day, that they noticed patterns in Tuesday versus Thursday kind of things. And just every time that we have increased the technology, some people talk about it always being about, oh no, I'm overloaded, I don't like computers. But in so many ways, it has done things with, you name it, personnel management, inventory management, the quality of products. Instead of having people looking at an assembly line and removing things, you have a little sensor that looks for the charps, the little potato chips that are too brown or green or whatever else it might be, and I think I saw this on one of those connections type programs where it shows you, how are crayons really made, how are potato chips really made. It has this monitor, and it has a little puff of air, and if it doesn't like it, goes poof, and it blows it off the conveyor belt. And so, like, the quality control goes up and up just because somebody invented a monitor, that little camera that was able to see that is miscolored or misshapen or whatever else it might be. So all the automation, and it might have been, oh no, we lost the job, but not to be weird, how good a job was it that you were the potato chip quality control person? You know what I mean?
And go so much.
There's creative work to be done. There's more human work to be done. If a machine can do your job for you, it's not that you're useless, it's that you've been doing so much less than what you're worth. And now we finally found a way to offload that onto something that never tires, never loses its attention. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You've heard my talk, and I always push back on that. I'm like, I don't accept the argument, oh, we're losing jobs. Folks, this isn't like suddenly something in tech has taken over jobs and those jobs go away. It is not new. It is literally hundreds of years old. I ask people this to make my point. I get stupid. I'm like, so did you pay your tithing this month to pay for the knighthood to protect your town? No, because technology in warfare got rid of knights. And we don't complain about that. Do you pick up your phone and say, hey, operator, connect me to Alan? No, we got rid of operators because tech improved it. And you don't complain about that. Did you stop at the blacksmith on your horse on the way over here today? No, you didn't, because we got rid of blacksmiths with cars. Tech replaced it. We're not complaining about that. It's like, I tell people, I'm not even going to listen to the argument that, oh, we're losing jobs because of tech. It's always happened. It always will. And numbers show it always creates more jobs than there were before the tech. So
that's right. As the world has grown from 2 billion to 7 billion people, it's not like 5 billion people are sitting around idle. It's that the kinds of things they do and can do have hopefully increased and improved in so many different ways. Kelly and I were just talking about this. We're both in our 60s now, and we're retired. And it used to be that when you were retired, you were like used up. Your knuckles were all wrecked because you had done something for so long that you developed your arthritis, and you had muscle things. You were a tough job really wore on you. And nowadays, by us being both like kind of white collar people, we are able to still do the walking that we want to do, the hiking. We still have all of our senses, that we're not, our eyes are burnt out, or that I can't breathe well because, oh no, I was breathing in some terrible black lung disease level stuff. So all those things are because we applied the technology to, how do we keep people safer, not just crush them and get more productivity out of them, but maybe make it a more humane atmosphere, make it a safer thing. So one of the things that weirds me out as a technologist, is to see the people that have been like stripping out OSHA requirements and monitoring and things that keep people safe. Wow, that is the dark side of tech. We don't need Simon Legree. We don't need people that are just going to do this until you drop dead. We need the fact that technology really does improve people's lives, and in ways that are, if you have it and you don't use it, it's as bad as if you don't have it at all. And that's a crappy world. There's a famous Mark Twain quote, right, about the people who don't read are as bad as the people who can't read, or as bad off as the people who can't read. Why would you have this and not make use of this wonderful thing? Because you really care about wringing every last cent out of a situation instead of saying, what's the right ratio here? What's the right risk versus reward, and human versus machine?
I guarantee if some of these people complaining, if their husband, spouse, kid, or parent had a medical emergency, had a heart attack, had a stroke, was in a car wreck, that they would be very grateful for all the tech that is going to save that person's life right now. I guarantee that they wouldn't complain about, but we've talked about it before. People are irritated.
I know. I just saw this wonderful meme of like someone saying all technology is from the devil and you can't change my mind. And the reply to that, of course, was, you're literally writing this on the internet, right? You know what I mean? And just that level of, and the way I phrased it was, so here's two statements, one of which is totally false and one of which is totally true. Then indeed it isn't from the devil, and indeed nothing's going to change your mind if you've already, like, in the face of all of this wonder, you're going to retreat to the dark ages, the craziness that says progress is somehow flawed or evil, instead of a joy.
And to make your point, you go use what you say is hilarious.
Yeah. Let's see. So let's segue that into Gran Turismo. It's interesting that we have this thing nowadays of some things start off as books, then movies, then video games, then plays. Gran Turismo was a very successful video game series, right?
Yes. So what do you know about the movie?
So I saw previews in the movie theater about a young man who, by being trained on a simulator, since we talked about that earlier, is now so good that one of the leading racing teams said, bring that kid in. Is that the premise of the movie?
I asked that because it's the video game that it comes from. And we've had a lot of video game movies. Mario just came out and was very successful. We've had other less successful video games in the past, video game movies. And a racing movie, Need for Speed, came out several years ago, and it could have been better, let's just say.
Okay.
I'm just making that point because this is not like a story version of the video game. That's not what this is at all.
Okay.
So and I absolutely loved this movie. I am probably going to go see it again. And the minute it comes out, I'm buying it. I told the teachers at Biomed that are the coaches at the esports team, I said, you really should see the movie and get the kids to see it, even though there's some swearing in it, get permission. These are high schoolers.
Oh no. Yeah, all this good stuff, but that'll invalidate it.
Yeah. I said, you really should watch this movie because it's exactly what you just said. It was Nissan had this one guy, marketing guy, had an idea. He said, look, the new generation of drivers is not buying cars because they're like, what do I care? I don't want the money. I don't want to spend the money. I'll get an Uber. I'll walk. They don't want cars.
That's right. I live in an urban area specifically so I don't have to have a car and a suburb and a drive. Okay, commute.
And he said they aren't dreaming of the open road like past generations. And that is something we've got to sell to them, which is extremely great marketing. You're not selling a car. You're selling that open road dream. It's marketing.
Like the Springsteen thing, Born to Run. Yeah. Exactly.
So,
even though that's got a dark message, but anyway.
He identified the Gran Turismo players saying that this is the most realistic simulator out there on consoles. Yes, I know some of these people probably have $1 million simulators where if you're buckled in, you cannot tell the difference from a real car. But this is like,
for mortals, you can buy this.
Kind of woke the management up that, hey, let me just tell you, some of these kids have put in thousands of hours on these cars. They know these cars and tracks very well. Some of these kids are getting times better than the real drivers. He said, we're going to take the top drivers, put them in a real academy and train them how to drive a real car and sponsor the top winner as a real race car driver. And everybody thought he was crazy. Of course. It wouldn't be a movie if this guy wasn't crazy. How many of those have we had throughout the ages?
Because all the existing drivers have to poo-poo. There's no way without the practical experience and the feel of the car and all the work I've put in, he can possibly be my equal. And then we find out maybe yes.
Exactly. But before we get to that point, because that's what's going to happen, it'd be the worst movie in the world if you're like, it all failed and the kid died. See ya. You know what I mean?
What an interesting experiment ending in death.
So what really got me excited about the movie because I've talked about the esports a lot, and I'm doing work with kids, and I'm actually going to be working with the local esports team a little bit. I'm not saying I'm a coach or anything, but I'm really excited about that because I think this is an area for kids that they can see that hope in the future. That we have a lot of kids that say, what do I can't get a job without some training, and I can't get the training without getting a job. And there's a lot of depression in that with that. And video games is something they all understand, they've all done, and they can see some hope with it. They can see they can make video games, they can do this. So that this movie explores those to a small degree. I really liked that. And the director was the same guy that did District 9, if you're interested. And I really liked how he delved into the culture and the viewpoints of video games from different people. It wasn't just all's good and all that. The kid's dad didn't get it. And this cracked me up. He's holding a soccer ball and he tells his kids, what are you messing with those stupid kids games for? Come out and kick the ball around. This is a real career. What? Wait a second. Soccer has not been
one in a million people that make it up through the ranks of soccer.
That's the attitude. And how long has soccer even been a career choice? It's not like it's been thousands of years. It's recent.
Especially here in the United States, it's like still trying to become a real legitimate sport.
But this was in England. They're much more into football there.
Footy, exactly.
Yeah. So I love that they did that. And they had multiple people with multiple viewpoints and the things that they went through to get this kid. But man, this kid had a rig set up in his room that was like, I want to drive that. Obviously, they go through all the trials and tribulations and the ups and downs and the painful stuff. And he actually does race. And he is still a racer to this day. He has raced, I think it said 111 different races at the time of the movie. Better yet, and this absolutely made the movie for me, was the real race car kid guy. He's older now. He was his own stunt double for the movie.
That's pretty cool.
That just sold me on it totally.
My interest was not high for this because honestly, I'm not a big video game player. I tend to be like a computer game player. But having said that, that's a cool story. And I'm trying to think a while back, a long time ago actually now, at one point I was being asked to work on simulation stuff because I had done some stuff that related to it, let's put it that way. And the people that were mostly doing it were not yet Flight Simulator, if you will, from Microsoft or the $49.95 console. It was the cost of failure is high for piloting a plane, for doing things in the Army, that you can't wreck the unit or you can't wreck yourself. And so they had simulations that really were, how do you do house-to-house combat in the Army, and that everybody went in, and that VR type stuff where we're seeing now finally that maybe we're going to have Google glasses or Apple goggles or whatever else it might be. They have had versions of that for a long time that were meant to simulate the combat experience or the racing or the flying or whatever. And so what I had done way back in college was I had worked with display devices and with like how we can tune things to human beings so that always you're doing a simulation. When I look at the screen, way back when it was, wow, I can actually see the raster going. If you just turn sideways and you can see this, it's because we're really at the limits of what human beings can do to get that the real world looks like it's, that the screen world looks solid like the real world does. But even then, you start to learn about how people do perceive, and we don't stare and it's exactly right. We saccade when we change our point of view, that we take samples. And so all of that interesting science about what are the sampling rates that you need to do, what's the frames per second, how do you keep making it so that it'll be good enough, they won't notice that as you move through a dungeon, you don't have to have everything be perfectly realized, that what's right within your touching distance, if you will, that has to be that the moss looks right on the wall. And as you look down the hall, your natural sight tends to fade because you don't have eagle eyes all the way at 80 yards, 40 yards, 20 yards, whatever else it might be. And the math behind how do you simulate all of that so that the world has continuity, that as you move, as you change your point of view, it still maintains that you don't get like artifacting and effects that take you out of the simulation, if you will. And I loved understanding that you really have to know how eyes work. You really have to know how people's ability to concentrate and the ability to multitask, and that especially when you get away from just eyes, but you start to do, we are continually in our environment getting oral signals, audio type stuff, and that some of the really good scary games early on were great at simulating. I hear a noise, but I'm not sure what it is. And it was here, but it seems to move closer to me. And your natural thing is to get your adrenaline going a little bit because you're getting ready for fight or flight. Something is coming, but you don't know what. And I just loved learning all about that. So that's what led me into doing this, maybe working on it. But then what I discovered, at least for video games and stuff like that, I didn't want to work in a place, and actually multiple of my nieces or nephews have gone into, it's a hit making type thing. That instead of when I did stuff for business, like I played my games and I loved them, but in business, there's, if you will, I'll use the term continuity again. That business is going to be in business and you can supply services to it. And you're not having to take all the risk on yourself as to whether the business is going to stay in business. Whereas, boy, that was so much the case already then for video games, that they're working on this game. It's going to be a 1.5 to 2 year gig. And if it doesn't sell well, that team just disbands, disperses, and you go on and you're marketing yourself again. And so it spoke against my sense of at least wanted to have some security, and you come away with a better resume. You know what I mean? You know that you're going to have the skills that you learned and stuff like that. But I never wanted to work for, a hit maker, and especially where it wasn't like you were doing little things all along that still had how well you were going to do. You released, of course, alpha and beta versions and stuff like that. But that, and maybe also the risk reward ratio, who's going to make all the money? The guy who owns the company, not the 100 people involved in the storyline and the raster anti-aliasing and whatever else it might be, the various different specialties were, character definition. And so that's why I, as much as I have as a hobby done, I can do a new skin for Pathways of Eternity. And I was curious as to whether I could do that, write a good enough game using somebody else's game engine and stuff. But that hasn't been like my
driving passion.
Enough. Exactly that.
Yeah.
But for some people, you can really tell that it was, wow, they really put themselves into this, that it's their sense of humor and it's their sense of mythic size and stuff like that. So for that reason, I'm curious, because that cool mindset, like Gran Turismo, maybe it's along the same lines of Ready Player One. If you're in the generation that grew up with, that's very much an alternative reality that you've lived in all your life. And it's very cool to see things from different companies interact in the ways that you had to go to Who Framed Roger Rabbit to see Warner Brothers interact with Disney, interact with Hanna-Barbera or whatever, whoever was involved there. That's kind of wish fulfillment if you're a consumer of all those things. And you finally get to see them together. Who knew that Daffy and Donald could be up on the stage at the same time and stuff like that? So you're rating, like you want to see it again?
I absolutely loved it. If you're not, I pulled the things about the younger generation and the kids and the video games and the attitudes and the perceptions. That was very important to me in the movie. The whole movie was good. I wouldn't say the story or the drama was the best I've seen in years, nothing like that, but it's a true story and it's done very well. Okay. It's got the marketing guy is what's his name that played Legolas in Lord of the Rings. The trainer guy is David Harbour from Stranger Things. And I didn't recognize any of the kids. They were all pretty new.
Yeah. So the director, like you said, was from District 9, right? Is it Boz somebody? I'm trying to think.
No, Blomkamp.
That's right. South African, right?
Yes.
That's movie. And so he was one of those guys that, like, the first movie that I knew he did was District 9. It's like, how did you get so good so quick? How is this such a great, mature movie? And I've never heard of you before. So thank you, Neil.
Yeah.
All right.
Again, I think it's based on everything when I talk to parents and people about the video games, because I'm not involved with the esports. I don't have kids in esports. I'm not a coach. I'm on the fringe a little bit, talking to some of the one local team, but I'm an evangelist, I guess you could say. And I'm trying to turn people's minds, because I do have a class that coincides with that, to show people, hey, you can make a video game and get into the video game industry. No college necessary is essentially what it is. And I'm not saying college isn't good or anything like that. It's just our world isn't needing it for some of this stuff anymore.
There are multiple paths towards.
Exactly. And people sometimes get very offended. I've had some people like in my face about some of the things I said. And I'm like, I'm not saying that we should just drop and bomb every college or whatever. I'm just saying to make people aware that there are alternative paths for the kids that it's good for to have an alternative path.
Yeah.
But it's a fun movie too, because I like racing. I want to go get a PS5 with Gran Turismo now. I do have Gran Turismo 1, but that was 20 years ago. So
once in a while, when you like step out of a franchise, then come back into it, it's, man, this is a whole nother universe. Well, it's on steroids. They improved everything. Yeah. And, oh my God.
The problem is, I can't just go get a PS5 with Gran Turismo. I'm going to need that steering wheel with the pedals, and I'm going to need that thing to sit in and put it in. So it's like a race.
You need the rig.
I got to have the whole rig, man.
A haptic chair that gives you.
Yeah. Colin had some friends in high school that they programmed a sim project and they had their own rig and stuff. And that was their final project. Cool. And he also told me after I saw the movie, he has a friend he knows from school that used to fly the flight simulators, like you said. And that's how he trained and got his pilot's license when he was old enough. And he flies planes now.
How cool is that? Yeah, because you already had 100 air hours, you will, right? How much you had been in the simulator.
Yeah, like you said, the Army has used it for years and cops use it and stuff. The award ceremony I go to with Brandon Hall, we had this Dubai police force come in because of the training simulator they wrote for their people to train in their city, their people, the culture and stuff. And they customized it to fit them, and they won an award for that. So cool. I'm just, wake up, people. It's not like something you can argue against. It's already here. It's already happening. It won't stop.
I will throw out this semi-cautionary tale because I mentioned, hey, let's talk about investments a little bit. One of the things I invested in Skills with a Z that is trying to get esports leagues and so forth set up here in the United States, and they're already very successful in Korea, Japan, wherever else it might be. They're having a devil of a time penetrating the US market, maybe because there's resistance by the parents, because what's the chicken and egg type thing of, do they have, I don't know, kind of like being in a boy band, you can have many K-pop bands that are all successful. We can't do that here except for certain standouts like the NSYNC or Skills is down 80% on my investment. It's one of those that just hasn't been able to do it. Breakthrough, generate revenue, et cetera, et cetera.
They might just be one of those that's a little ahead of their time because it's becoming a juggernaut that's not stopping, and it is growing. I mentioned before, the Ohio High School Athletic Association this year approved high school students in Ohio getting varsity letters for esports. And there are over 200 high schools, and there are like 200 universities and colleges that are across the country that now have esports, and they're recruiting.
Yeah, that's what it's going to take is, like you said, Skills is their proof of concept, if you will. But when somebody like Ticketmaster says, hey, we're now selling tickets to these various different esport events, and all you have to do is have this kind of rig so you can follow it. And they already have Twitch and various other streaming for those kinds of things.
Oh, streaming's huge though. Internationally, it's huge. When I say huge, it's 4 billion people streaming. So it's just that's half the world watching streaming esports games or video games of some sort. And I went to the fair recently, and the newspaper was there. And I said, hey, do you guys cover local sports teams in the high school? Oh, yeah. Which ones? They said, all of them. No, you don't. What don't we cover? I said, esports. They're like, what's that? So I'm pushing the agenda.
You can make that connection. You could be the guy that says, hey, wake up. This really is something worth getting first in, getting taught. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway.
Is a field truly established not until it has its first scandals. So for viewing and stuff like that, it's wow, let's watch some of these guys. They're really skilled, they're really wonderful, and they're witty as hell. They have PewDiePie is who I'm thinking of, that wow, he's really good and he's funny, and then here come the anti-Semitic remarks or whatever. So why did you have to be a jerk? Why did you just because that is what happens too. That there's no guarantee if you're a great basketball player that people should be going to you for life advice. You can be great at basketball, but not a good human being.
We've seen that way too many times.
It's a good human being and whatever else it might be. So that's just humanity. That's just par for the course.
So continuing movies, you finally saw Blue Beetle, which I've seen. What'd you think?
So I really liked it because I thought that it was innocent. Like that Shazam, the first one, not so much the second one as well, but it really is like, what would happen if you were a young man bound for adventure in the corporate world, and instead you inherit the scarab. I have this thing kind of like you inherit it, but it takes over you, and just so much the interesting, realistic stuff about superhero origin stories. Some people would be like, hey, I found this ring and now I'm mighty and everything is fine. And in some other cases, it would really screw up your life. Your family would be scared of you. You'd have to, what all the time that you're spending to learn how to use it, you're going to make mistake after mistake and maybe kill yourself, kill others, whatever. Powers that be that want your scarab, that they don't want you to have it, they'll be after you. And it included all those interesting elements of a more realistic superhero story that you don't immediately go and fight crime and be.
Yeah,
it really is wonderful about Latino, not Latino, I guess is what an idiot Midwestern white guy I am. Is Mexican also included in Latino culture?
I think so.
Because it's very much Mexican, and that sense of family and that wonderful, like, immigrants that have done well for themselves. And it very well portrays that, the love of the family and the solidarity of that. While this kid's going through them, they don't get so scared that they abandon him. They're more like, well, we're going to tease you about it. We're going to help you out.
The family was wonderful.
Yeah. So I love movies where there's some recognizable faces, like George Lopez is in, but it's not a star vehicle. It's not like we found the perfect kid to play him and hey, some Brad Pitt is playing a 19-year-old kid. No, they really did all kinds of just realistic. The way that people can put themselves into the hero's guise is because it could be that guy. He's not amazingly good looking. He's not, I don't know. He was like a cute young man. And so there is like the romance that's involved in when you're like 19 years old, you're like pretty much a walking pile of hormones, you know what I mean? So what do? Are you going to use this thing? So, hey, now I can get dates. It was just amusing as to how, and there really was menace. There were good villains and what was going on. Susan Sarandon, the
was wonderful. Yeah.
She was very good as the villainess, and just, it's funny. You don't have to be a cackling megalomaniac to be a really good villainess that's just concerned with, I want my way. I want to make money, and I'll do anything, whatever it takes to get it. I feel that I've been in the shadow of men for much of my life, and that's pissed me off for 40 out of my working years. I'm not taking that anymore. It
was more her ex-husband or whatever, the one particular man that she.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a very cool thing about, they paid homage to a lot of DC history. They talked about Ted Kord, the original Blue Beetle. And
they showed the suits.
Kind of like a bargain basement Batman, if you will. But it wasn't. Some part of what they seem to always do is they feel that they have to throw in other heroes to kind of have the walk-ons. Here's Wonder Woman, because we just had to have her in there somewhere. It was its own little universe, and they made reference to it's in the world, but it wasn't just trying to make it so that those guest appearances were what was going to sell the movie and sell more tickets and stuff like that. I'm really up on this movie. It's really a good introduction to the world of superhero movies, having already heard like a little bit of backlash about how people, I'm getting tired of that. It's like, of what? There's 100 different plots, 100 different ways in which a superhero movie can be. This way, there's now, and we have talked about this, now there's hero horror, now there's hero romance, now there's all kinds of different things. So I wish that there weren't, I've never liked that sweeping statement type thing, because it doesn't speak well to the person making the statement. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, really, that's all you get out of this, is that they're all alike? They're not all alike.
I hate it. I hate that all they want to know and track is how bad it did on the opening weekend, and how much it fell the second weekend, and how people are avoiding it. I was in the theater and it was fairly packed, and people were laughing out loud and enjoying the movie. So it's like
a great sense of humor. It really has. Just whatever thing seems to be that they let a whole bunch of tension build, and they throw some humor in there to dispel the tension.
They threw George Lopez in a scene and boom, it's funny.
Exactly. It really was what life is like. How do you get through tough times? You really like whistle past the graveyard. You say things just to like, oh my God, I can't believe this is terrible. So I'm going to make a joke out of it because I don't know what else to call it.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So yeah.
And I mean, I think, and this is my personal opinion, I think what Marvel did and built up to Infinity War and Endgame was just this overarching story that took forever and built up for so long in people that it was this huge event. And that was a pretty huge movie with so many people, so many things happening. And it's hard to not say how great Endgame really was, especially since we've never, but the problem is now people are like essentially saying this is an Endgame. You're not going to have another Endgame. Enjoy it for what it is. And I agree, it was a great movie. I've told people that. I'm like, stop reading the internet. Go watch the damn movie.
really, how many times have I read who's Marvel's next big bad? And it's, you could do 100 great superhero stories that don't have to culminate in a battle for the universe. It doesn't all have to be Ultron and Kang and Doctor Doom. And there really are big bads in the Marvel
Yes.
universe, but there's all kinds of, Daredevil has made a career of not fighting all those crazy ultra powerful ones. He like takes care of his little corner of Hell's Kitchen. And
that was my exact comment for Guardians of the Galaxy 3. People were down on that movie, and I'm like, what is wrong with you people? I'm like, this movie is all about, these people are risking everything to save one of their own. He's our family. He deserves us to battle with every bit of our heart there is. That is such a huge story. We have it in so many good books and movies in the past, and they did it very well in Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
Better than Fast and Furious.
See, Fast and the Furious, kind of, when you're taking a Toyota in space and using the gas pedal to go forward and the steering wheel to move, you lose your point. I know you are, but I will go see the next one too, by the way. But see, also that's the point. Also, actually, I can enjoy Fast and the Furious, and I can still enjoy Blue Beetle and Guardians for what they are. They don't have to all be Endgame, you know.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
No, I liked it. And if you're someone who, like, whether you like superhero movies or not, you'll like this movie because it really is a young man bound for adventure. It's the hero's journey. It's finding out who you want to be growing up, that there's gonna be some sacrifices necessary and all that kind of stuff, and there will be love and hate. And I don't know, I was entertained. Maybe, I don't know, 10 minutes out of it could have been a little faster, but even that, things don't have to be continual assault on my senses in order to keep my attention.
Exactly.
And when you live in a short attention span world, once in a while you get out of a movie and you're exhausted. I need to go like in my own room and listen to my own music, because that was too much. This actually does have dynamics to it.
Yeah.
It has lull and build up and then climaxes and stuff like that.
And I agree. It's a perfect stepping stone movie to get, into, if you haven't watched, there's too many superhero movies, go watch this one, because you don't have to know 20 years of history or anything. It's very self-contained.
Exactly.
And it's funny you say also about that, about everything doesn't have to hit you all the time. I just watched The Equalizer, the first one with Denzel Washington. And I made the comment to some of my author friends and said, go watch this movie for the story, because they spend the first hour just leading up to what the conflict's going to be. I said, if this was a book, every one of our editors would tell us, you got to trim most of this off and just start here at the conflict. But it did it in a way that there were snippets here and there, and it kept your interest without being just, boom, here's the dead body. So I was very impressed with the story for The Equalizer, which what you just said.
Did you go back and rewatch it because 3 is now out and you wanted to refresh your idea?
I haven't seen any of them. That was my first watching.
Okay.
We'll go watch the others.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
I occasionally do that when John Wick 4 comes out. I wouldn't mind rewatching some of 1, 2, 3.
And you can't really pick on me a whole lot about Fast and the Furious if you enjoy John Wick. I
totally agree. Everybody has their guilty pleasure.
I love John Wick also. In fact, the comic book store just got a nice John Wick figure that I was looking at. I'm like, that is a nice looking little figure.
A precursor, if you will, to the John Wick movies. There was a movie called Shoot 'Em Up with Clive Owen, Paul Giamatti, where I think it was directed by John Woo. And the reason that matters is because I think it might be the most bullets on screen ever. There was never a time when people weren't just shooting out of a pistol an unending supply of ammunition somehow. You know what I mean? They didn't bother with all I have to change cartridges.
Well, that just wastes movie time. We'll just skip that.
It was such a celebration, the balletic violence of shooting bullets, spraying everywhere.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen that one, it's really good, because you just start laughing at, sure, why not? Let's have a guy go down through those staircases and he descends and he's just killing 100 people without getting nicked, of course. It's incredible.
Yeah, so, you gotta love those sometimes too.
And it's funny because we had a week off. I just had a cool thing happen. I think I might have talked about online. Netflix is ending 9/29, coming up in less than a month. They're stopping there. And to be clear, their DVD service. Streaming is doing so well that, of course, they're continuing that, and they're competing with all the other streaming services. And I think that DVD still makes money, but it's not making enough money to not be a distraction to the core purpose of Netflix, etc. And in fact, Reed Hastings even said he knows it's going to transfer from one to the other, and the way that the company's going to do well to survive and thrive is going to be timing that. And apparently he really has. So when they first got into streaming and people were talking about, well, you're cannibalizing your own DVD service, but he wanted to be in there early to establish the brand name further, and especially to make all the mistakes and get past it and learn, so that he'd be the first one and then the dominant force, if you will, in online content. So having said that, the reason that DVD ending is cool is I got a letter, having been a longtime subscriber, that says, when we end this service, whatever the top 10 movies are in your queue, we're going to send them to you. We're going to we get rid of our inventory. And how cool and decent is that? And it could be, of course, that they've been watched many times, and that depending on people's hygiene habits and the quality of their player and stuff like that, it might be that I get the dreaded skipping or crash.
You know, if you're getting one of those ones that help promote technology through porn, who knows what you'll have with that DVD.
Exactly. I'm going to have to get my Netflix squeegee out and make sure I clean each. But having said that, then also anything that you had out, we won't ask for you to return them. That's why I've been getting one disc a month and just perpetually always getting one. Takes 3 days to get the next one. And I'll always watching, working my way through various different series over the course of time. I watched all the Netflix and all various different things through this. So what an interesting exercise. I have 500 movies in my Netflix queue. I really am omnivorous. And over the course of time, you really were like, I want to watch all the Hitchcocks, all the Woody Allens, all the Coen brothers. So you add them all and you work your way out, but things keep getting added. And as new things come out, they bump down things. Every one of those I added, I really wanted to watch, but now that the time is coming that you won't be able to do that.
Right.
So what are the 18 movies, if you will? The most you can get out of a month is, I went from 1 to 8, and I'm getting this 10 free. And how am I going to arrange my queue so that the movies that I'm going to have at home are going to be the ones that, not just that I want to watch, but that I want to have? There's a whole different thing about rewatchability of a movie instead of having seen it once. I love the Star Wars movies, for instance, and yet a couple of them I've noticed when I see it again, it's just not as effective as the first time you see it. The surprises aren't there. They're not as effective. Whereas for me, comedies are one of those things that I kind of laugh in the same spot, even though I know the joke is coming, because it's so well crafted, because the people are so good at it, et cetera, et cetera. And so Colleen and I went through the list and said, wow, I would love to have Groundhog Day at home, because that's one of those infinitely rewatchable movies. I love how well done it is, how smart it is, how it honors the audience's smarts to say, what's the next thing you would try if you really were trapped in a loop? Would you go through joy? Would you go through despair? All of that. Dirty Rotten Scoundrels has scenes in that movie that every time I watch it, I pre-laugh. I start laughing because I know this wonderful thing is going to happen. And also, which things are going to be available probably via streaming, because that way I don't have to worry about having them. They'll always have certain Monty Python things. And Monty Python and the Holy Grail is never going to go away from somewhere. The BBC will carry it, or Netflix, or Amazon, or Hulu,
library.
The library, exactly. Out of that 500, I kind of bumped, and I already got my first 8 to home. And it's like the Faulty Tower series, which I think is probably the best sitcom ever made. And then, so that's my top 8. What's in my next 10? What do you mean my top 40? I've not been able to get the next 10 perfectly solidified. And it's not just me, it's Colleen as well. I want to make sure, but what an interesting exercise to say, okay, but Desert Island Disc, have you ever heard about this? If you're going to have these 10 things to listen to when you don't know whether you're ever going to get off this island, what would wear on you the best? And they don't even necessarily have to be your absolute favorites of all time. It's the ones that have that wearability, that replayability occur to you.
Yes. The thing is, a lot of times the movies, I'm like, if I see something and I'm like, wow, that was really good, I've already gotten it. But I changed my queue a little bit because my mother loves Harrison Ford, and we used to always just get her lots of Harrison Ford movies, but we pretty much started to run out of Harrison Ford movies to get her. So I just went through Netflix and found all the Harrison Ford movies that I didn't have for her and put those at the top of my queue. So they're not brand new in case, but I can print the covers. I can get blank cases. So that I'm going to do that for her for Christmas. But here's a pro tip. I took my list. I took like the top of my list. I went to the exchange and I went through their like $2 DVDs. And if I found it on my list, I bought it for $2.50 and crossed it off my list. So I'm like,
because $8, 8 discs for $32, I'm willing to spend $4 on them. What if I can find them for two? For a good idea. Okay.
yeah. So that and a lot of the movies I like, just like you, are ones that people don't keep or don't buy. So I got a good chance of finding a lot of them. So
we have noticed that our taste is not the public's taste.
yes,
We really see a lot of obscure, like Colleen at one point for a birthday got me Allegro non troppo. I think I've talked about it before.
Yeah.
It's an Italian version of Fantasia, but classical music done to animation. Boy, it's wonderful, and yet nobody has heard of it. But when she got it for me, it was like, man, I've been looking for this all my life, and now I have a copy. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to get those particular taste things.
exactly.
Okay.
And it is dangerous to go to the exchange regardless, because they do have movies like for $2.50 or $5. And it's like, wow, look at this stack I got. Here's $42. Just
I think one of the things I mentioned in the discussion online was I'm really not a collector of that. For some reason, even though I'm a collector of everything else, because I do have good memory of those movies and I don't need to rewatch a lot of things, I didn't do that. But some things, like already, suggestions that I didn't have to get because I already have all the Pink Panther movies, the original Peter Sellers, Inspector Clouseau, and we rewatch them pretty regularly, especially number 2 and number 3, because they're just hilariously good throughout.
yes.
We have the Mel Brooks canon, like from Producers up through maybe History of the World or something like that. And we watch Young Frankenstein, we watch Blazing Saddles, we have certain things we love watching. And so I already have some box sets I have all the Monty Python TV episodes, if not the movies. And so I was already like, I'm glad that I already have gotten those things. I even have like Blackadder on VCR because it was a thing where like they had a little trivia contest. And I was like, I love those things. I know this. I won it. And then I went over there and he goes, here, you get the set. It's, it was after DVDs were already available, but I want to keep a DVD. I have a DVD/VCR player that I haven't gotten the new TV that I mentioned a while back. It doesn't have the 3-plug thing that goes in. Right. Everything is HDMI. And I'm going to lose the ability to play those Blackadder VCR tape things, as well as there's many things in the library that are not DVD, but are only tape. So I have to keep my old technology hand in so that I don't lose the ability to play certain things. Anyway.
For me,
so that's really cool though. To get them for the mom is a wonderful idea.
Yeah, I hope so. And for me, what it started going to the exchange was the kids when they were younger. Not that it's super expensive, but you got 2 kids young. My wife wasn't really working at the time. So it's, going to the movies, getting them popcorn, getting them something to drink. It's not expensive, but still that's $40 or $50. I went to the exchange. I bought like 7, 8 movies for $20. We stopped at the dollar store, got dollar candy and a couple pops of their choice, and we went home.
Movie night at home.
Yeah,
throwing up on the wall of your building. So
we do that too. So that's where it started, and then it became almost like some OCD habitual thing where it's like, how many 250 movies can I get today?
Honestly, a deeper level of thought about this, as I came to realize that there really were some things that were unavailable. Like when I went to look, I searched for a movie called Evil Roy Slade for a long time until a friend of mine, his father had an extensive video collection. He gave me a copy. The reason for saying that is there's having said I don't want to be a collector of this because I already have such other collections. Some part of me is proud to say, as long as I'm around, I can really give somebody all the James Bonds. As long as I'm around, I can get, you know what I mean? Like the fact that it hasn't gone, that it got converted, it got digitized, converted to bits, and then somehow there was a contract dispute, and all those movies went away for 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
It drives people crazy to see that happen. But as long as I have it physically and a device on which I can play it, they can't take that away from me. And somehow that's important to me, that there's like a little bit of the Omega Man thing that I've talked about. If it really was that the world was going to hell, I'd go hole up in the library and make sure that this hoard of knowledge would not be destroyed and burnt by the mutants, because I'm going to defend that thing. And kind of my collections are that. It's very much my taste, but my taste is pretty good if you're a relentlessly geeky guy like you and I are. And so what I already have, and like when I pass, I think occasionally I've gone to a place called the Digital Den. Not sure why it's not coming to me, but I'll go there and they have all kinds of used CDs, DVDs, video games, that kind of stuff. And it'll be like somebody with my taste just died and the estate sale got all bought here. So I'm going through and not finding one or two. I'm
Right.
finding 20. And as long as they're $5 each, sure, for $100, all this treasure, someone's going to have a field day when they get into my collection and go, man, Al, you have everything. You have all the Mad Magazine paperbacks. You have all, you know what I mean?
Right. I thought about that with my son. He'll be happy, but it'll be like, okay, how many comics do I have to go through? How many CDs? How many movies?
And
how
there is
many
a
Star Wars collectibles? How many?
The Swedish death cleaning that we're doing is in some cases so that no one else will be burdened by it and that no one else would love it like I would. You know, when I'm trying to sell my comics or trying to go through the paperback collections and stuff like that, I'm aware that the world is heading towards bits instead of atoms and all that kind of stuff. And yet I'm also having been, Facebook has been wonderful. And even previous to that, I was in some of these like BBSs and stuff where there really are people that still care about, I'm going to read every one of the Destroyer paperbacks. I want them in paperback. I don't want the digitized. I don't want the Project Gutenberg version. I like the old John D. McDonald, Travis McGee books. You know what I mean? You got to look for those. They're 50 and 60 years old. And yet they're, for their time, they're just such a great read. And there's something cool to be able to say, I got a friend that loves Earl Stanley Gardner, and he's got every one of those. And, and whoever has done those little labors of love, this science fiction from the 50s and 60s when it was like really new. And I hope that it doesn't have to be that everybody appreciates it. It has to be that the people that really would appreciate it, they're going to love me a lot because I saved it from just getting thrown into the trash.
Why has nobody jumped on making a good Destroyer movie? They had that one back in the 80s with Fred Ward.
With Fred Ward and let's see who Joel Gray, the guy that was the yeah, exactly, and previously Cabaret was the master of ceremonies, and that's what most people know him from. But he was a very effective Chian.
And they had what's her name from Voyager, the captain from Star Trek Voyager.
Okay,
I forget her name, but I just actually rewatched that.
Kate Mulgrew.
Kate Mulgrew, yeah.
There we go. Okay,
I just rewatched it recently, and I'm like, okay, it's not horrible. It's just very lackluster for an action supposed thing. A little spy in here. It just was not exciting, but needed more excitement.
The Doc Savage movie is much like that. It's a little too corny. Like, for as much as the quality of that series was high, there are certain things that just maybe they didn't have the special effects or the understanding of what makes archetypal heroic.
That's fiction. It. The understanding.
You know what I mean? They played it for laughs instead of playing it for, wow, this is like a world-threatening menace, and Doc is the only one that can, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I don't know. I was amused by it, but I wasn't one of those movies like, hey, if you want to see why I love these paperbacks, watch this movie and you'll get it. I couldn't in pride say that kind of thing. It was just like, I continue to read the books because they're pretty good.
Yeah. So there we go. We recommend Blue Beetle and Gran Turismo, but not Pulp Fiction movies. And the Flash Gordon movie. Remember that one from back in the very early 80s?
Here, I'll do a quick Queen vocal for you. Flash. Oh, I don't think I really screeched it well enough.
But even worse, that song has the worst line ever written for a movie, especially if you use a song. It's where Dale goes, Flash, I love you, but we only have 14 hours to save the earth. Who says that? That's like the worst line ever. It drives me crazy. I have to skip that song. I can't listen to it.
People just made a reference to the Buckaroo Banzai in the Eighth Dimension movie, and that really did have the right amount of irony and understanding of, we know it's corny, but we're going to have a lot of fun with it anyway. Right. And so just that, and I should have mentioned this. One of the movies that I have every single time when I was like bipping around and would come across Kelly's Heroes, I would watch it to the end. No matter how far it was into the movie, I love this movie. I love all the characters in it. And once I mentioned that, a whole bunch of people kind of came out of the woodwork and said, that's my favorite movie too. I love that movie. And everyone was quoting lines to each other. And you know how you bond over that. You get like that everybody has this secret kind of little thing. And what's interesting, it was a lot of my younger brother's friends that I don't think I necessarily introduced them to it, but I hope that maybe there was a time when I planted the seed, because I gave them a lot of music and other things that mattered. But the fact that they've all discovered it, even without me being involved, it was just so nice to have people appreciating it in the same way that I did, that they got what made it so good and so funny and so memorable and so rewatchable. So
Right.
Kelly's Hero is another one.
That's a great movie.
Exactly.
Buckaroo Banzai is not on Netflix. I've looked before.
Yeah, we now that we regularly use the Roku box, and it has a search feature that goes across multiple services, whatever ones you have, and sometimes they have things and they go away. Sometimes they have things, but they cost, honestly, not $2 or $3 or $5 to rent, but like 20. So
Yeah.
whatever licensing agreement they got going on, Troy, a friend of ours, gave Colleen for her retirement a subscription to the Criterion channel.
Ooh.
Very interesting because they really are well curated. It really is not just the best popular movies, but the best film noir, the best madcap comedy, the best Busby Berkeley musical, whatever else it might be. And so I've been browsing that, just waiting for happy discoveries. So I watched a movie called The Last Seduction that I remembered from probably the 90s. That was, let's see, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio. Darn it. I just watched it. Why am I not coming? It really is perfect film noir in terms of the sneakiness of it, and that the people really are not normally moral. And how do you live in a world where you really don't have compassion for other human beings? You'll do whatever it takes to win the game, to get the money, to whatever it might be. Sorry, Linda. I just can't believe I can't remember, because she's really, yep, that's the woman that people would let themselves get killed because she's so pheromonal, so seductive. The Last Seduction. Darn it. I'm very sorry that it's not.
We'll look it up. We'll look it up.
Exactly. And
another great technology advancement.
Yeah, it's funny when it used to be that you'd go to the video store and you'd browse and stuff like that, and sometimes you wouldn't even know what attracted you to it, but it was an interesting cover. Or, oh, this guy directed this. I didn't know he had made this movie as well. Let's see what he did when he wasn't doing the studio blockbuster, but it was something more independent. And I've discovered so many. How I first discovered the Coen Brothers was pretty much like Gene Siskel at the end of sneak previews going, so this movie is great. It's only going to the theaters for a week because you've never heard of these directors before. There's not really big movie star pull power, but it is, for this being their first movie called Blood Simple, it's perfect. It's amazingly well crafted. And that started it was fun when you're into a band early. It started my love affair with the Coen Brothers from their very first movie. So then whatever they put out, I was going to watch it. And I've never been disappointed. Like, when somebody recommended, "Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou?" And that is something that at one point, Colleen and I had that in-house, and it went away. I think Tim might have lent it to somebody else and it went away. But having said, really, like, it isn't only humor. There's some things that are just like movies that make you feel good, movies that if you want a good cry, movies that if you want a big climactic battle. Highlander is one of my favorite movies, where it's just, I want to see the Kurgan, such a great villain. I want to see those sword fights. I want the sense of humor and the sense of menace from it. Infinitely rewatchable. There'll never be a time that I don't want to watch Highlander again.
Highlander is one of the movies I think would do well with a good remake, that they could make a really good version of it today.
I know we've talked about this before, because when they had a sequel and a bunch of me and my friends went to see this sequel, and after the movie, we were like at a restaurant, just like looking up at each other in stunned horror, and then looking back down and going, what? How could they do that? It was so bad. It was so bad in comparison to how good the first one was. Even we felt totally betrayed.
Even the changed director's cut didn't really resolve it well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They took like a cool mystical concept and tried to make it science fiction-y. And they, like, again, like, how did they not understand what made the first one great so that they totally screwed it on the second one?
Yeah.
How weird. Oh,
yep. But the TV show I always liked. I thought they did a good job on the TV show.
I need to return to that, because I got a point where I watched like the 5th or 6th episode and I was like, they're already repeating themselves. I don't know that I want to see this thing again and again. I think that over the course of time, they built the mythology, right?
They did built a lot.
The Watchers and whoever else it might be, because I read a little bit about it, but I haven't. That's one of those things that now that Netflix going away, I'm going to have to find the library that carries all of those things, the box set of the series.
I know at the Streetsboro Flea Market, the bookseller guy has the VHS tape sets, because that was one of the first series besides Star Trek Enterprise that I saw a full collection on
that
VHS.
Got syndicated, if you will.
I got to have that.
Cool.
Okay. So, all right.
So I'll look for that. Okay. All right. I know you had a tight schedule. I'm glad we were able to fit a session in this week. Very good.
Yeah.
So, in brief, you got a whole bunch of cool stuff coming up at the Pittsburgh RG
For this
You're gonna be,
weekend.
like, hosting talks. You're going to be hosting panel discussions and
Yes.
stuff like with people that we love, like Bill. So I hope you have a wonderful weekend. We will
Thank
not
you.
be missing it because we have family things and other things. We're going to go like seeking advent calendars down south. They
Cool.
just got all the advent calendars in. I hope you have a really wonderful weekend.
You
and
too. Enjoy your long weekend. Not that you have unlong weekends. I mean, your weekend begins Thursday through Wednesday, and then your next weekend starts Thursday through Wednesday. So
the reason that I was able to go to Blue Beetle because, hey, I don't need to worry about fitting it in after I get back from work. I can actually go do this thing. Colleen and I are taking advantage of that. Like, how about a jigsaw puzzle? Sure, why not?
Nice.
Okay.
All right. Enjoy the long
All right.
weekend, man.
Take care, Stephen. Okay.
Later.
Bye-bye.
Well, we hope you enjoyed that episode of Relentless Geekery and that you'll come back every week and listen and join us in our conversation about all the exciting things in the world of geeks and the fun that we have, whether it be music or the movies or comics or role-playing games or board games and video games. We talk about so much, and we love having everybody come with us. Please, if you did enjoy the show and you like listening to us each week, give us a review, give us some thumbs up or stars, because that helps other people discover us and helps the podcast grow. And we also are starting to add some geeky, unique t-shirts. If you go to our website, relentlessgeekery.com, you'll see we have a shop with some t-shirts in it. And these are some fun sayings, some fun designs we've had and talked about on the show. You can also get a Relentless Geekery t-shirt. And this would also help support the show, as there are some costs with hosting and the software that we use. So it'd be great if everyone checked that out also. But please, we hope you come back next week and give us a review, pass it off to your friends, let them know. Join us as we talk more about the wonderful world of geekdom.
You have been listening to the Relentless Geekery podcast. Come back next week and join Alan and Steven's conversation on geek topics of the week.